Hey, Crawlspace listeners, we wanted to bring you an episode that recently aired on our other podcast, Missing.
So for any listener who doesn't know, like you said, Tim, we have two shows, and we always want to air episodes of Missing on Crawlspace when they are appropriate and relevant.
Okay, and that's what we are bringing you here today, so please make sure to like and subscribe and follow us on social media. Thanks a lot for listening.
He took the women from the men in their relationships, and he just was like, this is my wife now, and I was included. He started to have sexual intercourse with women whenever he wanted, and if you didn't give him what he wanted, you'll get shunned, humiliated, ridiculed, beaten, hit, slapped. It was a lot. So yeah, it was horrible. It was dark.
On today's new episode, we are joined by documentarian Ben Zand and the great Jenaé Newell. And Jenaé is a survivor of a cult, survivor of domestic abuse, narcissistic abuse. She is a central focus of the fantastic docuseries, The Cult of Natureboy. This is easily one of the most powerful, harrowing, and uplifting episodes we have produced. And The Cult of Natureboy is a 4-part investigative series produced by ABC News Studios and Zandland. It premiered on Hulu on April 28th of this year, 2026, so you can check it out now. It's directed by the award-winning filmmaker Ben Zand, who is joining us. We can't recommend this docuseries enough, so please check it out. And while you're at it, check out everything Benjamin has going on at the very cleverly named website, www.zand.land. And please follow Jenaé on social and pick up a copy of one of her books, most notably Lesson Learned, Wisdom Granted by the Divine. She also has another book called The Goddess Affirmation Book. So pick up a copy of any one of her books wherever you get your books. All links to follow and all links to pick up Jenaé's books are in the show notes. Okay, we really hope you enjoy this conversation as much as we enjoyed having it with these two. It's an important one, and we would love to hear your thoughts, so please leave us a comment on YouTube or Spotify. And please follow us on social at Missing CSM. Now we're going to break real quick for our sponsors, and we will return with Jenaé Newell and Ben Zand.
Welcome to the podcast, Jenaé and Benjamin. How are you both doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, really good. Thank you so much.
So excited to have you two on this episode today. And Tim and I have interviewed, I don't even know how many people we've interviewed during our careers as podcasters, but it's in the hundreds. It's definitely in the hundreds. And there's like a handful that make me nervous before, and it's like this nervous anxiety. And I have this nervous anxiety right now because what the two of you have done is remarkable. And the work that you produced is remarkable on this. And your journeys have been incredible to I watch and be a part of, like in a secondary way. Some people don't know who you are. If you want to start with an introduction, whoever wants to go first, you can go reverse alphabetical order or however you want to do this.
Yeah. I guess I can go first. I suppose I'd start by saying Jenaé deserves 10,000 times more credit than I do with this story. I'm just a journalist and filmmaker. My name is Ben Zand. I make documentaries about a range of things. I'm actually from the UK, but kind of weirdly came into contact with Natureboy about probably 9 years ago, and who is the center of the story. And I kind of first came across him because I was a journalist for the BBC at that point. I made kind of like gonzo documentaries where I'd go to a place and spend time with people. And I was heading to Central America, and I decided to go to Costa Rica because it looked really beautiful. And in the course of kind of researching, I think I typed in kind of like Costa Rica commune or Costa Rica cult, and then an article came up about melanation, which is what it was called at that point. And then I think crazily enough, I think I just sent a message to Nature Boy, Eligio Bishop, and he immediately replied, and it started a very unusual relationship. And then me and Jenaé met many years later.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we met many years later. Look what we did. I'm Jenaé. Ms. Jenaé Alexandra Newell. I am a singer, songwriter, artist, wellness advocate, sound healer, the works. And I just came in contact with Nature Boy probably around like 2017, 2018. Was a fringe member, which is basically a member who's not a part of the carbonation cult physically, but in the dwellings of their own home or wherever they're at, they're a member. And I came into the cult physically in 2020, and I was the one who placed charges on Eligio Bishop for whatever bad things he's done, which we'll get into this podcast, I'm sure.
And Benjamin, I'm just curious, what was it in your email that you think, or were you told, stood out to Bishop that made him reply so quickly?
I mean, to be honest, no one knew who he was at that point, really. He wasn't like kind of extremely famous. He basically had like a reasonable following, a kind of core group of followers online. But it wasn't like he was kind of world famous and kind of all the media was paying attention to him. It was a really kind of, I suppose, specific reason that I was looking at Costa Rica as a kind of, I suppose, filmmaker who makes films in the US and the UK. So I think he kind of was enticed by the BBC because it's a kind of international media organization. And I think I messaged him on Instagram. I think even maybe he had like a WhatsApp phone number or something that I could contact. And I remember I jumped on a call with him, and he was like, you know, at first extremely on board with the idea. I remember the first thing he said to me was, I'll show you everything. You know, I'll tell you the truth. You're going to see things like you've never seen things before. And I was like, okay. I didn't really know what to think. I didn't know anything about the kind of the group. And I think at that time, I was looking at it like, oh, this is interesting. You know, Costa Rica is a beautiful place. He was like kind of an intriguing character. He seemed to be a good talker. And I thought he seems like a little bit of like a kind of maybe, snake oil salesman in a way, because he kind of was like really kind of talking like he had the answer to all the world's problems, but he didn't look like kind of like really problematic at that point. I just thought, oh, this is interesting. So I arranged to go and see him. So I flew out, and I was actually stopping in El Salvador at first and then going to Costa Rica. And then when I landed in Costa Rica, I got a message from him saying that he had been deported from Costa Rica. So then things got a lot more complicated, but I decided to still go to Costa Rica, and I met a lot of people who had just left him basically. And that's kind of where the story started. Yeah.
What about the story made you think that this would be a good documentary?
Well, I mean, so at that point I was making like, I kind of do like kind of on the ground journalism where I kind of like spend time with people and try and understand the world. Like I try and be like the least judgmental human being in the world. And I'm not trying to really like impose my views on people. So at the start, it was just like, this is interesting. It's a different way of life. That's fascinating. At the time, I had a show on the BBC where I'd go to a place for like a month at a time and I'd spend time with people. So it was kind of reasonably innocuous at first. I just thought, this is interesting, you know. And then as I tried to make the documentary, he got like kind of, so I initially made a YouTube video that was about 20 minutes long. And he got like increasingly kind of threatened or like kind of he stopped taking my calls. He started being very difficult to get a hold of. And then it's basically because this tied up with the time that he was kind of being called a cult, and the group was being called a cult, and he was being called a cult leader for the first time in the media, and he was clearly quite paranoid about it. So I made that initial documentary, and it always kind of had a it always felt like an unfinished business because I never got to meet him. I didn't get to kind of explore the group wider. It was only a short thing. So for years, like I kind of was thinking about doing something with it, but then thought maybe it's too niche. Like I didn't know what had happened to the kind of group. And then I started getting a lot of messages from people basically who had either left or who were watching him because they had seen my YouTube video, and then they were saying to me, "You should investigate Nature Boy. The kind of cult's got crazier and crazier." And at first I thought, "Oh, this is just people messaging me online. I don't really know what they're talking about." And then like increasingly I started to look into what they were saying, and I was like, "Oh, okay, this has got quite wild." And then at that point I was like, "Can I even make this a documentary? Is it like?" I thought it was like maybe too small. I didn't know how many people were in it, so I was trying to figure out that information. And then the kind of main point that I started really working on it again was probably about 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. And I kind of got back in touch with Nature Boy. He got arrested not too long after that. And then I was talking to him via his wives who were in when he was in prison, and I was talking to him kind of like twice a week. And then I started getting in touch along with Janine Weaver, who's a producer I work with, who Jenaé knows very well. And so we started kind of reaching out to people and seeing if they'd be willing to talk, and that's when I started to kind of seriously work on it as a series.
And Jenaé,
Yes.
there is this thing whenever we talk about cults, and we've done a few episodes on cults, but it's pretty rare that we have someone who has been through it and has come out in a positive way on the other side and is using that experience to help people. So amazing work, and thank you for coming on to help spread that message. But there's always this talk about this void, right? This void that people who become members of cults don't realize that they had, and then when they get into this, they only kind of realize it when they're being deprogrammed, when they're out, and then they understand, wow, there was something that I needed there. Then there's this black utopia that is this concept, I guess is a good way to put it, this return to nature. Can you describe that and how that maybe filled something that was missing in you at the time?
Absolutely. That's a wonderful question, actually. So I would say one of the biggest voids, especially with the melanated people, was just thinking that we were just a minority. Like nothing we could do can make us be known as something special in this world, especially in America. So what he was pitching out is that we were gods. We were gods and goddesses on this earth, and we can, tap into special abilities while going out into nature and enriching ourselves with the sun, the elements, and everything around us, and just getting in tune with the natural earth's vibrational frequency. So that in itself filled me up. I'm just like, well, I don't want to be killed out here. I don't want to be just thinking that I'm not anything because of my skin tone. I want to believe and be empowered by my skin, by what's inside of me, and by the nature in itself. So that was one of the voids that really, stood out to me when I, started to think to myself, what made me get into it, is just that I wanted to feel special. I wanted to feel like I had a place on this earth and a purpose on this earth when society told us that we didn't. Of course, there will be like, family trauma and family issues as well. We wanted a sense of community, a yearning and a place to be where we can just be ourselves and not be judged. And for thinking differently, a lot of people in carbonation, they would think differently. They were the black sheep of the family. So when you get around people that's connecting to whatever you're connecting to, it's just a beautiful feeling, especially in a paradise, why not? So that's another void, was just community and family, And one more thing I will say, it would just be a sense of more wanting to be more spiritual. A lot of us kept away from a religion or other things that we grew up in, because something just told us it wasn't for us anymore. So we wanted to seek something else. And a lot of us was looking for a savior because, that's what we were raised to think, that we needed a savior. So it was just more sense of wanting to get deeper connected to God in some type of way, shape, or form as well. And, it led us into Nature Boy for some reason. So, yeah.
It's yeah, and I just want to just button up that thought with saying that all of those concepts sound so beautiful, right? Like I consume a lot of these like cult docuseries and stories, and it always starts with me thinking, I would jump into that. Like, you want to tell me that you're going to bring me to a beautiful place and I'm going to get in touch with nature and I'm going to my body and soul is going to vibrate at the same frequency as the earth. Like, yeah, count me in. Like, this is amazing. And it frustrates me so much that it's all used to manipulate. Like this wonderful concept is used to manipulate.
Yeah, yeah, it is frustrating when you think about it, and it's disheartening. It is.
Yeah, that's a much better way to put it.
Yeah, I think that was something that I kind of always thought was really intriguing as well, as like, because for me it wasn't confusing as to why someone would join kind of Nature Boy in this sense, and because I think a lot of what he was talking, he's talking about real issues that people face, and the kind of there is racial inequality, and the world does feel too kind of synthetic and concrete, and people do feel kind of trapped in that 9-to-5 lifestyle and that kind of sense of purpose and meaning. So it's kind of there was a clear kind of sense of why you would go there, and if it, I think me and Jenaé spoke about this, like if it worked out, it would have been beautiful. Like the concept was initially beautiful. The sense of like, living in nature with people who kind of on the same kind of wavelength as you, and trying to live in a space that's kind of free from kind of racial prejudice and any form of prejudice, and you're just connected to the earth. It's all fantastic. I guess the question is, why did it go so wrong?
Right.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.
And a thank you to our sponsors. Back to the program.
Yeah, it is an appealing concept. There's no question about that. Jenaé, when did you start realizing that it sort of had a darkness underneath it all?
Okay, I have a story for that. There was a time where I'm a hugger. I'm a very much of a hugger. I love to give hugs, and I just wanted to give Nature Boy a hug, And out of nowhere, as I'm giving him a hug, because I said, I just want to give you a hug, he says, I think it's time for you to have sex with me soon. And I said, oh. And this is not, I promise, I'd never seen him a day in my life in that way. Like there was times where he tried to recruit me as his wife, but I still had more interest in other things and other people more than him. So it started to get dark around that time when he started to sexualize me, and then he took me on as his wife when I kind of didn't really want to be, and then he made me stop being vegan when I really didn't want to. Like, there was a time where I was, and I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with eating meat. I eat meat sometimes still, but there was a time back then where we was preaching, to be more holistic. And he would switch up what we eat from time to time. Like, it wasn't just being holistic. It was also eating stuff that he preached not to eat. And it didn't make sense to me. It was very confusing. So I know that's kind of silly, but it just made me feel like, well, we're not really practicing what we preach. So that means you're not really standing up to what your standards. You're kind of giving off false prophet in a way. But then, he tries to manipulate you and bash into your head that this is the key, this is the way, there's balance in life. So you just get brainwashed from it all. So the darkness started to happen, especially around the time when he started to over-sexualize me. Yeah.
And did you start to see that with other members as well around that same time?
Yes, absolutely. There was a time where he took the women from the men, in their relationships, and he just was like, this is my wife now, and I was included. So, he started to have sexual intercourse with women whenever he wanted, wherever he wanted. And however he wanted, if it was people involved or people not involved, whether it's privacy or a show, it was just basically what he wanted. And if you didn't give him what he wanted, you would get shunned, humiliated, ridiculed, beaten, hit, slapped. It was a lot. So yeah, it was horrible. It was dark.
If you did, I suppose, disobey, as you just kind of mentioned, would Bishop, would he commit those acts of abuse, or would the other followers do that and shun you?
Well, good question. Like I always say on every interview that I've ever done, that he's never hit me physically. Emotional abuse, absolutely. Physical abuse, no. But he has ordered women to do these type of things to me, to hit me. I never seen him get in a squabble or anything with the men. I did see him hit a man once. He slapped him up just for looking sad. It was sad. Like, he was going through a lot. He was swelled up because he was sick. And, because of all the things that was going on, he wasn't getting proper medical attention and he was just looking sad. And, out of nowhere, he starts smacking him up. Excuse me, smacking him up. I've seen that, but I hardly ever see him hit the men. Now, the women, yes, completely. He would hit them. I seen him bashed a woman's head into the wall. I've seen him whipped a woman over 100 times with a belt while she's wet, so it can hurt her more. I've seen him smack a woman. I've seen him, all this other stuff, and he also smacked a woman so hard in the back of the neck that her hands flipped like this, and she lost feelings in her hands. So yeah, just to answer your question, yes, I did see him get abusive, but more of the women though than the men.
And Benjamin, when you started the filmmaking process on this, was it your intent to use the archive footage as sort of like a weapon against his message?
I guess it was more, I mean, I don't know if I'd say a weapon. I guess it was more just a sense that, I think we made the kind of conscious decision, first and foremost, to make it not Nature Boy's story, but to make it a story of the people who, like Jenaé, who had kind of been there. They had these kind of hopes that had been kind of destroyed by a guy who had misled them, and really to kind of forefront that story as opposed to his. I mean, his story had been told by himself many times, and he had made everything about him. So it was about making it not really about him. But the idea was very much from the beginning about using the footage, I suppose, partially stylistically to get you into the group, to kind of, it was, it's kind of rarity that kind of, they kind of just documented everything. And he actually documented in many cases the abuse of what he was doing, which kind of gives you a sense of his kind of mental state of what he thought was acceptable and how he thought the audience would respond to it. But yeah, the idea was to kind of make a case, I guess, on the kind of public record using testimony and the footage he filmed himself to kind of show the reality of what happened inside this group. And I think to just show the kind of the madness of it, in that, like, he really got to a point where he thought he was untouchable. He was putting out things that were clearly wrong, problematic, kind of illegal, and he just thought it was fine. He thought there'd be a way to get over it. And it also calls into question the kind of, I think, the problematic nature of social media in that sense, where like it is a bit of a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, in that he was looking for attention. He was kind of doing more and more crazy things to get attention. People were giving him that attention, whether it was kind of positive or negative. He was getting feedback from people, and he was obsessed with that side of things. So I think, like, you couldn't make this without the kind of footage he filmed and on social media.
Right. And I'm curious if you were like regularly, and maybe some of your production team, were you all regularly checking yourself so that you weren't indirectly or unknowingly promoting his propaganda by using this footage? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And to be honest, that was a concern I had from the get-go. And even through the conversations I had with Nature Boy, the big conversations I'd had with him on the phone, where he'd say to me, I don't care, kind of, because at first he'd say he wanted to be in it, or he wanted like money, or he wanted me to pay for his legal fees. And like, obviously we can't do any of those things. And then he'd say, okay, well, I'm not going to be in it, but you're making it about me anyway. So you're promoting me. So there was a kind of concern around, are we just platforming this guy, and are we just basically making him more famous for the sake of it? And that's why I said I made the kind of conscious decision there to, I think the story is important to be told as a kind of cautionary tale. But I also think kind of the stories of people like Jenaé are kind of really important to understand, I suppose, both why someone would join something like this, but also the consequences of that on a life, and how kind of those dreams can just be kind of dashed by people with bad intentions. So I think, yes, obviously there's an element of it that now more people will know who Nature Boy is, but I don't think they'll know it in a positive way. I think it kind of highlights the problems of this type of thing. And I think I was pretty comfortable in the end with how he's portrayed in it, and the kind of that mix.
Jenaé, can you tell us about your decision to physically join the cult?
Yes. Like I said, I was a fringe member for about maybe 3 years before joining. I've been watching since 2017, and in 2020 I joined. The decision just came from wanting to be with them, being with my community. This was people I thought that were family. I stayed in contact with them throughout the years, on and off, and I just wanted to do also my purpose, my calling. I was gonna go to Bali, Indonesia, just to become a yoga teacher first. However, the members of Carbonations, once I met them, like I said in the docu-series, I met them at a party, and, ever since then, I couldn't get them off my mind. And, we kept in contact, and they're telling me, "You should be here, you should be here," and they're looking into my astrology chart, which, they go by astrology there, and they're like, "Well, you're supposed to be with a community, you're supposed to be running a community, you're supposed to be with your family, your soul family." And I was just like, "You know what? Whatever, Bali. I'm gonna go to Carbonation. This is my family. This is my soul family. I've been watching them for years, and I've been embodying what they preach. And because of that, I became a better person. So let's go." And, the rest is history.
But also, I mean, it's kind of like the most insane kind of connection, wasn't it? You were working in was it like a kale
Yeah,
cafe, and they just
yeah,
kind of like wandered in. You were like a waitress in there. I mean, talk about kind of like, coincidence.
the details? Yeah, absolutely. So I was at Cecily's Raw Reality. That is a raw vegan space in Atlanta, Georgia. It's definitely so good. Everyone have to try it. So I worked there and I was a cashier. And basically they came, the men. So the men are the people that would go out and get this stuff, and the women would stay home. And so the men, the group of men came into my workspace, and they were just like, just standing there, and I'm just like, "Oh, yeah, hey, what's going on?" And they knew me because, like I said, I was a fringe member. So I traveled to Thailand, and I was, on the phone telling them to be with the knowledge and speaking what they speak. And they knew me. So they're like, "Oh, what's up, Natiri?" Because that was my name, Natiri. And then Eligio comes in, and there's Eligio. And he's like, he didn't know me at first, like he didn't recognize me, but he knew me because we spoken many times before. And he was like, "Oh, Natiri." So he gets all flirtatious and all this other stuff. And he tells me to call him, which I didn't really end up calling him because I was kind of nervous. But I ended up staying in contact with the men, like Tron and Courtney, which is Solar. So yeah, it was just a surreal feeling, when I saw them. I was just like, "Oh, this must be destiny. This must be fate."
And the fact that the group, they were constantly doing like live feeds, and they were always using that like social media outlet. Did you or did you see people start to kind of lose the sense of their own selves just through that? Because that's like a digital version of you. It's a virtual version of you.
Yes, I would say for the most part, most people did, because we're forced to do it. You have to go online and talk and speak the truth. If you don't, we would have meetings about like, "Oh, you haven't been on your stuff. Haven't been on the knowledge. You haven't been putting out the message. What are you doing?" And behind every message, you're gonna have to give reverence to Eligio, the cult leader, whether he's Eligio the Christ or Eligio, chief and commander of the Earth plane, or my higher self. You have to continuously say this so you can put it in the people's head that he is the chief of the Earth plane. He is the Godhead of the Earth. So yeah, we would lose our sense of self because I honestly didn't want to keep doing that. What I wanted to do was basically, well, I did want to speak in the truth to the people, but I wanted to embody it. Like I didn't want to just speak whatever you're telling us to regurgitate. I want to embody what we're supposed to be doing. Excuse me if I get emotional. So it's just like, yeah, I started to lose my sense of self because it's like, what am I doing? Am I really being in the truth? That we're supposed to be living? It was that. So I'm glad you asked that question. That was a very good question. Thank you.
Yeah, and in some ways, is that the goal here? And I don't know that he consciously knew what his real goals were, but throughout the documentary, it comes up more than once that he's really sort of after the followers' souls. Did you feel like that?
Yes, absolutely. He's asked to have my soul. There was one time that he, really looked me deep into my eyes, and we're like close to close, face to face. And he asked me for my soul, literally. And I put this in my book as well. And he's just like, trying to get an answer from me. I didn't say yes and I didn't say no. I just stared back at him. But my soul, my insides was just staring at him, screaming, "No, you can't have my soul." But you don't say no to the king. You can't, what, whew, if I would have said no, I don't want to think about what I would have, would have happened. So I just stayed quiet when he asked for our souls. He would always say our souls belong to him. That's no question about it.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.
And a thank you to our sponsors. Back to the program. That's remarkable, and a good moment for my next question for Benjamin. You described him as the ultimate influencer. So that's one way that he was, manipulating or wielding his power to manipulate. Can you get more into like your feelings on him being the ultimate influencer?
Yeah, well, I guess, that's the unique thing about it, really, which is like, it's not like kind of, like Jim Jones or something, or FLDS or whatever, where it's kind of operating slightly away from kind of modern society and it's trying to keep what it does in the wraps. I mean, his whole thing was that he's kind of proselytizing on social media. He's kind of created it's like a reality TV show where there's a cast of characters. They all have kind of names that he's given them. And then he's kind of instructing people to post on a constant kind of basis, promoting him and the kind of group he's created. And then he's like extremely engaging in these reels, and he knows how to kind of make content that's going to go viral. He's figuring out how to kind of master the mixture of controversy and humor and then kind of the pageantry of it, like kind of wearing specific clothes that you can't really look away from. So he starts to really, I think understand how to just capture attention in the attention economy we currently exist in. And he kind of knows how to, I guess, like pull people in at the top of the funnel. He does things to get a lot of attention, and then people will filter through that, and the people who really kind of are captured by him will start to message him, and then he kind of grooms them and goes through that process and kind of really hooks people in. And initially he'll love bomb people. So it's that kind of blend of like kind of influencer meets cult leader, which is fascinating, and very, very likely Nature Boy is not the only guy who's going to do it. I mean, this is kind of like the next generation of cults, I think, in that sense, where it's like, this is now how you recruit people. And he, I think what was fascinating about it is it started to have like a kind of checklist of how you would join, which kind of Jenaé can talk about much better than me, but a lot of people would join in a similar way, where they'd be kind of like fringe members and they'd be commenting. They might change their kind of social media handle. They'd start commenting on all of his videos. They'd show support that way. Then they'd start talking to him, and then they'd eventually kind of, or other members of the group, maybe they'd meet someone that they thought they could have some kind of relationship with, and then they kind of progressed from there. But he kind of really developed like a kind of a checklist of how to get people in, and so I think he is the kind of ultimate influencer meets cult leader, which is kind of terrifying, and also I think it's increasingly not rare.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yes, definitely more to come. Well, I'm glad you've sort of laid this groundwork of this case study, though, so at least people can point to it when others inevitably arrive. At what point did the live audience begin to turn on Nature Boy?
Well, it's interesting to answer that, I guess, from both mine and Jenaé's perspective, because I suppose you were in the cult at that point. I mean, it feels like there was always a sense of people, and I suppose there's always a balance of people who just always thought it was a bit problematic and dangerous. There was always an underlying sense that kind of people who Nature Boy would call demons, or the devil, of people who kind of like were questioning him. And I guess a big part of the cult started to be around the sense that there were people who didn't believe in him, and he'd debate people on like Instagram Live and stuff like that. And Jenaé, I think you've been on those kind of lives and debated Nature Boy as well. So it wasn't so much, I guess, that kind of externally there wasn't dissenters or people who didn't quite believe him. It was just that he kind of used that as fuel to get more and more and more and more attention. And I guess internally inside the cult, Jenaé, I assume he was telling you that these people were wrong or they were kind of devils or demons,
Yeah.
like, you know. And so how aware were you of the fact that there were people who disagreed with him online?
Well, when I was in the cult, I didn't really pay attention much to it because he tells us in the cult, don't pay attention to it. Don't
Hmm.
pay. They're just demons. They're just trolls. They're just devils. They just want to kick you off your path. And if you're in carbonation, you're supposed to be the elite. That's what we called
Hmm.
ourselves, the elite. And the motto was collect the elite and convict the weak. So we thought
Hmm.
they were just the weak. We thought they were just the weak-minded. They didn't know any better. We're the elite. We're the gods and goddesses on earth. You're not supposed to like question what we're doing. So he told us to stay away from the social media trolls, block them immediately, remove the comments, but while he's telling us to do that, he's literally listening to it. He's online, scrolling through comments, looking at what people are saying. So he definitely cared about what people said. But for us, we were not, allowed to really give into that. Yeah.
Mm. Well, I think, because in this series, you meet Chantal the T,
Yeah.
who is actually, I think, how we eventually we obviously were very, very aware of Jenaé, but I think Chantal connected us, I think, in
Yeah.
the end, kind of around after the trial. But so Chantal started looking into, she's like an internet sleuth, and there was she started kind of documenting the cult and collecting footage and live streams, I think in about 2018. And at first was intrigued by it, started to think it was, she did like a psychology degree. She started kind of becoming more and more aware of the fact that there was kind of signs of this that made her kind of deeply uncomfortable. So there was definitely a movement from people online to try and stop this. And the people were kind of calling, they were swatting them. So they were calling police to go to different locations. It's just that I think it was that complication of the kind of, people were kind of moving around a lot. It was difficult to get a kind of real major charge without someone coming forward, like Jenaé kind of eventually bravely did. And at first, the main things were kind of deportations, because basically they were overstaying visas because, he didn't really think they needed to kind of follow normal immigration rules. So I think it was a combination of it just being quite difficult to actually bring about any charges. And this is what you see quite often, I guess, in these types of groups. And because of his kind of like stranglehold over the members, it's really difficult to get anyone to talk out.
In the age that we live today with social media and just like a new language in which another, like a future generation speaks, this is such a, I don't know, I don't even know how to like phrase this question because it's such a delicate balance. Jenaé, if you were to give advice or to tell people who are, vulnerable for this, for a similar situation to happen, like what are some of the red flags that you can say to look out for? And this is such a, I don't know, like, again, delicate balance because there is a whole new way that another generation communicates. So it might be harmless, or it might not be. Is there certain things that you would say to look out for?
Absolutely. The first and most prominent sign would be if it's trying to rip you away from everything that you love, like your family. Something that really, wants to cherish you would not try to rip you away from the people who love you the most. And tell them like they don't love you. I love you more than they do. So that's the most prominent thing, especially, and those type of people, those predators prey on the people that have family trauma, who want some type of union or community or some kind of love, affection that they weren't getting from their parental figures or their siblings, whatever have you. So that's the first thing is someone or some entity trying to rip you away from everything you've ever loved. The second thing I would say is just something that just really feels completely off. Please go with your intuition on it. Like I would, and a lot of other cult members can account for this. We kept feeling something was off. We felt it. We just felt it inside of us, but we didn't act on it because we were told otherwise. There's a God that lives in all of us, and God is love. So that love within us is telling us and trying to guide us. I would say listen to that and try to tune more into that, if you can. But that's the main two I can think about right now. I'm pretty sure there's so many, and I probably go through I say a lot of it in my book, but right now those are the main two I can even think about. Is just things being ripped away from love and from your internal compass.
Yeah. And I would just compliment you on that and say it's amazing to hear you say that, because it made me realize no matter where we are in our culture and society, it always goes back to that. And it's really reassuring that that's the advice. It always goes back to that age-old red flag when they're trying to take you away and make an enemy out of the people you love. They want to isolate you. And it doesn't matter how they're doing it. If they're doing it through social media or if they're doing it face to face, like, it always goes back to that. So really, really great advice, and really amazing to hear you say that.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
So, Jenaé, can you tell us about what happened when you tried to leave the cult?
Yes, can definitely tell you about it. And I'll do my best to be brief about it because there's so much things that happened. But basically, what triggered me wanting to leave is Eligio thought I was being disrespectful to him. I was just being extra friendly and nice to a guest that came, and she was a woman. I was very, adamant on making her feel welcomed because, a lot of the other women was very distant with her. She was only like around the men, dancing. So I just said, I want to, make her feel welcomed into our home and learn about our culture, what we're doing. I talked to her about astrology and everything like that. But long story short, he thought I was being disrespectful towards him and, being a leech, and I honestly believe he got jealous because he's a very jealous man. And I guess he got jealous of the attention I was giving to someone else, even if it was a woman. So he tried to turn the whole cult against me and basically try to say that how I was just leeching off of people's energy. Long story short, because I wasn't really necessarily agreeing with him because I knew in my heart that I was doing something from my heart. He, basically was just basically get insinuating to another woman it's okay for her to hit me at any time. And so she does. And and I was ganged up around and long story short, I'm just gonna cut to the chase because of course I was abused. Um, I just said to myself, I want to go home after some time of really just sitting down, thinking. And, while everyone else got back to whatever they were doing, I was sitting in a corner by myself. And I was just like, I knew what I was doing was right. So why was I told I was wrong? So that's the first time I started to really dive back into my internal compass, my heart. And I was just like, you know what? I want to go. And, long story short, like I'm generalizing, it was told they told the guys to get my bags. I called a Uber with some kind of money that I got because contacted a friend, or I had money, a little bit of money, and then I contacted a friend. And then I went back inside to tell him goodbye because he called out for me. He called me back inside and before you leave Carbon Nation, let me just say this. They're going to tell you how wrong you are for leaving your mission, for abandoning the Christ, for abandoning your family. You're going to be a troll. And then he's going to say that, well, he told me, no one's going to want me. I'm washed up. There's no love out there for me, and all these things. But I had to, put those thoughts to the side and try to move past those insults because I knew that was just only being tossed at me for me to stay because they want me to stay, but I know I had to go. So he calls me back inside after I almost got in the Uber, and I just told him I was going to say goodbye to him. And literally, he takes me into the other room, and I'm crying out no, telling him no already. I don't want to go into the other room. Like he's guiding me into the other room. He's coercing me to have sex with him. And you know, excuse me if I get emotional. It just happens to where you're not really able to say no to him. So that's what happened. Went ahead and did the do and still wanted to go. Told him how I still wanted to leave. I still want to go because he asked to do it one more time. Okay, one more time then, right? After a lot of no's, which he wasn't taking no for an answer. Okay, there you go. And then, can I go now? No, you're my property. Shut up. You're my property. You're my bitch. Get over it. So I knew in that moment when he yelled at me that I was his property and I'm not going anywhere, I had to escape. So I devised a plan in my head and got into the shower, called one of my friends to tell my mom that I'm getting out, and I devised a plan to where I would leave that night, but I overslept. And so I woke up the next rising, the AM. I'm like, oh my God, I overslept. I missed my chance to escape, but I did not give up. I did not give up. I looked around to see if everyone was sleeping. Everyone was still sleeping. I grabbed a bag with barely anything in it but my art, because I told you I'm an artist. And I tiptoed down the stairs with one big heavy bag, and I ran out and got into an Uber and left. So
That's amazing. Must have taken such strength.
yeah.
Speaking of strength, how did it come to be that you filed legal charges against him?
Around this time, I was just trying to heal, and I went to an art studio just to stay for a few days. My friend had an art studio. Her name was Kelly. Is Kelly. And after I stayed at the art studio, I went to this spa named Jeju, and it was a 24-hour spa here, in Georgia. So I can stay there for as long as I want, as long as I can pay, right? So I went there just to heal and meditate and get back to God, just to sweat out everything and just detox. I saw that online because it was brought to my attention, I believe by Jenaé or somebody, that they posted revenge porn on me. And I was excited that the porn was gone off Twitter at one point, because at one point, all the porn that we did together was online. And then Twitter took it down. So I wasn't there anymore. So I was just like, I thought when I left, I would be a new slate. Everything's good. But they reposted that without me being there, which is non-consensual. So basically, Jenaé reached out to me, which is my best friend, and she says, you can press charges for that. And I'm like, okay, but I'm still thinking like, I don't know if I should do this. That's my chief, my God. I was still indoctrinated, and I didn't want him to get in trouble. I just wanted my life back. But then she started to show me what was going on in the cult, because I wasn't looking at all. She started to show me what was going on, and what was going on, that he got more violent and publicly. He was already violent, behind closed doors, but now he's showing the violence. He's allowing women to hit each other now more. And my heart went out to the members of Carbonation. Excuse me. I'm trying my best not to cry. And I said to myself, enough is enough. I love them. I want them gone too. So I said to myself, I'm going to press charges, and I'm going to press charges for me, but also for them. And the rest is history.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.
And a thank you to our sponsors. Back to the program. That sentencing was remarkable, and the fact that you were the driving force behind it is remarkable as well. It's a tremendous sentence, because it made me think that when that came down, the thought process was another Jonestown isn't going to happen now. Like, they had the court system, you all put into place the saving of hundreds of people, because like that was the trajectory that this was going. Yeah. And it just made me think, like, that was the point. This isn't going to be another Manson or Jonestown. We're going to end this now. We're going to make a point about it and say, when you do this, it's the harshest sentence. Do you guys feel like this was a fair sentence?
I guess I suppose your opinion on this is more important than mine, Jenaé, as someone who kind of went through that. I think, he was given kind of life in prison without the possibility of parole, I think, and another 10 years. And I think, I seem to remember the judge saying, if he had shown any sense of remorse, any sense of kind of any regret, she would have kind of potentially been more lenient, but he kind of in the court did the exact opposite and was kind of laughing at times and kind of put himself out there as the victim and just kind of used it as another place to kind of create content. But I think, yeah, it seems, I think what you've said is correct, really, which I think the rationale was very much this guy needs to go away for a long time because he's never going to stop. And I think what was fascinating for me about all this is, I was talking to him multiple times in the kind of run up to that trial over the phone. And I think one of the big questions I had the whole time with this is kind of like, did he really believe what he was doing in his heart of hearts? Did he believe what he was saying? Did he really believe he was a god? Did he believe he was a Messiah? And the most fascinating thing with talking to him on the phone is he was absolutely convinced he was going to be released like in a matter of days. He was convinced he was going to get off scot-free. Even when I was talking to him, he was like, yeah, I'll definitely do an interview. I'll do it when I'm released. I'm definitely going to be found not guilty. I'm going to be cleared of all these charges, which I think shows a real kind of lack of self-awareness, or like kind of a real sense of just being completely above the system with no consequences. And I think the outcome was the exact opposite, which is that he is not at all above the system, and he got the harshest possible kind of sentence. But Jenaé, how did you feel? I mean, this was, I think, this would not have happened without you. It literally would not. I think, like, what was it like to have had that sentence?
Just to hear it, like I said, I felt a bit relieved. And a part of me felt like, oh my goodness, like, and I know this sounds so off and weird, but it just felt like I was putting away a man, like the indoctrination was still kind of in me. And I'm just like, well, that's another black man down. But this black man did not protect us. There were times where I thought to myself, well, life plus 10 years is a just sentence for everything he's done and something and even more. People don't know how much he's done. He's been a manipulative, toxic, narcissistic abuser since before carbonation. And I want to remind people about his promise to God. He told God when he battered and bruised his wife, his baby mother, 10 years ago, he promised to God that I would never hit another woman ever again if you get me out of this, because he was facing life back then. And he ruined his covenant. He ruined his commitment. He ruined that promise to God by continuously hitting women. And I feel as if the universe does what it do when, you get these type of sentences, because it sees what you're going to do in the future. And to protect everyone, for the good of all, because this is what I prayed before the verdict was going on, like literally moments before the verdict, I prayed to God, for the good of all, you make the decisions, God, for the good of all. And this was for the good of all, apparently. So life plus 10 years, yeah, it was just. And that's what the universe said. So yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Real quick, I just want to add, I don't think it's actually funny, but it is like sort of poetic justice at like little plus 10. I don't know why it's like, you know what? You're so awful.
I also don't know enough about the US system about why that happens. Like, what if you've got life without parole? What does 10?
It's just years, like the exclamation point. I guess.
It's just to be like, this is it. Like this,
yeah.
No,
cherry on
funny.
top.
Yeah, it's like in the afterlife too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your next life. Yeah.
Jenaé, did you have any fears that wouldn't happen? Like as you went through that process, like that he was gonna, because he was absolutely convinced he was getting off.
Yeah, I was scared. I remember when they told me that they was only just going to give him 7 years at one point. I'm like, 7 years? Oh my God, what is he going to do when he gets out? Like, I'm scared for my life, and scared for not even just my life, but other people's lives. What if they say, oh, well, he really is God because he got off scot-free. No, we can't allow this to happen. No, absolutely not. So, yeah, I did feel scared he was going to get let off. And plus, Mr. Booker, which was his lawyer, he was kind of throwing some jabs. So I'm just like, okay, well, we'll see. But at the end of the day, he confessed to what he did. So all the jury needed to do was hear that part. I remember clearly in the judge room. Like literally, all they needed to do is hear that clip again where he says, "She said no." And they're like, okay, that's it. I felt the shift in the room immediately. So yeah, I was scared for a moment, but God did what God did. The real God.
I think it also, that is the power, I think, of that sentence, because I think a lot of people were concerned about, what happens when he gets out. And it's kind of like, how do you kind of go on and live life with the sense that he's going to be out one day, kind of potentially I might see him again. And I think it just kind of put that to bed, and I suppose finally allowed some sense of peace.
Yes.
Wow. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I just want to know about what's happening right now in 2026. Jenaé, you mentioned that the cult is still going on and that you've written a book to sort of help some of these members deprogram. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Absolutely. As far as we're concerned in 2026, they still are members inside that cult. Even if he's behind bars, he's controlling them through a phone. And they have a Telegram group. And I believe they switched their name from Imagination to Dreamstream, just to like get away from the name Carbonation because it's been tainted. So people don't really know who exactly they are. But I have written a book. It's right here. Yay! It's my book named Lesson Learned, Wisdom Granted by the Divine by Jenaé Newell. You can find it on Amazon. And it just goes into detail about what I've learned throughout my years dealing with Eligio Bishop, the cult, and other things in my life. And I basically made it into like a wisdom book, and literally stories of what happened to me. So this is it right here. I also have a book called The Goddess Affirmation Book, which really helped me like reprogram my mind and get my mind back together, through affirmations. So, and when you do affirmations a lot, you start to believe a lot of what you're saying to yourself repeatedly. So I made those two books just to help not only myself, but other women or people who have gone through these things, and just to remind them that you are worthy, you're powerful, you're not your experiences. Yes, you have gone through it, but it doesn't define you. What defines you is what you do now with your life. So yeah, that's basically it.
Wow. Well, thank you both so much for joining us here today. We really appreciate your time and your work on this project. The documentary is incredible. It's riveting and so important for people to see. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Really appreciate it.